HexOS versus ZimaOS, the tortoise and the hare. Welcome to the Raid Room. Now, let's get it out of the way straight away before someone puts it in the comments. HexOS isn't an operating system. It really isn't. I would argue it is a refinement of true NAS scale, which is what it's built on, but nonetheless, we are still comparing, arguably, an entire operating system with another. So when we're talking about HexOS in this video, we are talking about true NAS and HexOS together when we are comparing it against ZimaOS, because a number of you, when I did a video a little while ago about ZimaOS arguably being one of the best beginner custom DIY free out the gate NAS software solutions in the market, I said it was one of the best, and a number of you reached out and wanted to know how it compared and whether they should opt for HexOS built on true NAS scale. And that's what this discussion is going to be about. The strengths of both, the weaknesses of both, and hopefully help you understand which one you should go for. So let's crack on with Hex first. Now, Hex, at least in terms of public access, is only about 8 to 9 months old. It's around about November 2024 when the brand rolled out early access to HexOS. Now, if you wanted all of the features of HexOS that aren't graphical, newsflash, you can already get them in the fact that you can get True NAS Scale completely for free. You download it, use, Rufus or Blanch Etcher or something, stick it on a USB, bang, load it up. You've got True NAS completely for free, although it is remarkably complicated, and that is where HexOS lives. It was backed by numerous investors. Probably one of the most well-known, of course, was Linus LTT himself, who did an investment of $250,000 into this comparative startup, but they were eventually, if not very early doors, partnered with IX Systems, people behind True NAS itself, and it was to create a user-friendly kind of gateway, doorway version, call it what you will, of True NAS. And HexOS is meant to be giving you the user-friendly, easy GUI access and control of the likes of Synology DSM, QNAP QTS, and more, and packaging it easily so a myriad of decisions, configuration choices, the more you make, well, effectively one click at a time without knocking around with data sets, jails, and more. Now, in that time, in the 8 to 9 months that it's been publicly accessible, or at least 12 months or so since it was officially publicly revealed in name, I will say one of the largest contentious points about it, despite the fact that it has already started delivering upon some of the early stuff, it has to be said that the biggest criticisms are, 1, the price, and 2, the client tool, or the absence thereof. So that first one, when it rolled out, the price tag for the very first month was $99. It was sort of semi-linked to a Black Friday deal, but it looked like that was early bums on seats. $99 for a lifetime license. On top of that, since then, it's been $199 for early access. When it goes in, presumably into a full 1.0 version, that is where you're going to go for the official targeted price of $299. There's no monthly subscriptions. It is just a fixed lifetime price tag there. Now, again, let's not lose sight of the fact that you are paying for a wrapper in many ways. It is a dense and well populated and well configured with a lot of preset wrapper, but you are still dealing with something that's wrapping around True NAS. Now that may change. They may introduce proprietary features into just HexOS down the road, or access to certain features, platforms and services that are only within HexOS. But at least now, at the time of recording, everything you've got in HexOS is already accessible via a slightly more complicated method, or very complicated in some ways, on True NAS Scale. It is attractive to look at. It is incredibly straightforward to set up your storage. There are, I believe, 3 applications right now that are all one-click installed. Then on top of that, the ease of creating new users, what folders they can access, all of that has been done incredibly straightforward. But that leads us on to the second problem people have with it currently. There's no client tool. Right now, it needs the internet, which for most home labbers, and especially those with even a modicum of understanding about moving away from cloud services, is a deal breaker, because HexOS, you want your data, your entire server, to be at your control, completely severed. And a lot of that is to do with having a client tool to get the job done. Doing the whole thing in the web GUI is not appealing to a lot of users. And most users, that was one of the heaviest criticisms that came out on day one of it. And that was even before it was purchasable on that Black Friday $99 promotion there. Again, we have done some updates on it. I think we did a 3 and a 6 month update on HexOS, along with the big Q2 update there. And HexOS seems to be nailing down the foundations so they can build up with things like a file folder management system there, a client tool being integrated there, more applications, community recommended folder creation. And one of the issues they've got with installing apps is it has to pre-create the folders, which may not be best suited to a lot of users' own bespoke setups there. So I understand there are hurdles, but nonetheless, it is nowhere near complete, but they're not pretending for it to be complete when they call it on the road to version 0.1. But the whole point of this video was to discuss whether you should go for HexOS or ZimaOS. Now, ZimaOS has been around longer. In fact, ZimaOS is about 2 years old since initial alpha testing publicly. You can see it on GitHub. But it was actually built on something that already existed for a few years called CasaOS, a much lighter platform designed for much smaller hardware profiles. But ZimaOS integrates a greater degree of RAID configuration there, a large degree of app installation, control, management, and more. Now, the device is a device that has ZimaOS installed on it. Again, a full operating system can be accessed via the web browser, but crucially, it doesn't need to be. It arrives with client applications for desktop and mobile, and alongside allowing full severing of internet services to get the job done and use the full spec of the services, on top of that, you have integrated features like peer drop systems, where you can have the app installed on a few different devices and securely and using P2P services with encryption, drop and drag files between systems, as well as integrating VPNs with OpenVPN if you choose to. OpenVPN services, I should say. Now, on top of that, you've also got Thunderbolt support. So if you've got a system that has Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4, currently from what I could see only Intel platforms, you've actually got a DIY NAS software solution, a free OS that actually allows you finally to take advantage of direct attached Thunderbolt and USB 4 storage, depending on your hardware configuration. That is a deal breaker for many, but much like HexOS, it still doesn't feel completely finished. It lacks a lot of the features that a traditional turnkey NAS solution for likes of Synology and more have, and a big part of that is to do with the fact that ZimaOS was designed for this. This is the Zima Cube. There's a Zima Cube and the Zima Cube Pro. Now, there's only those two. There's been recently the Zima Board 2, which has just concluded its initial crowdfunding on Kickstarter. But nonetheless, that is clearly Icewhale, the company that made ZimaOS, that is their focus. They are focusing on those two. They're letting the software being more universally available, but clearly development is being specifically targeted to those hardware platforms, and therefore it does limit, arguably, its deployment on bespoke DIY deployments and how many of those features you're going to be able to use and how many the brand themselves are prepared to support and work with to get certain things working when they are giving you a free bit of software. Also, we are discussing a platform, a software platform coming from China, which I know for a lot of users is going to be problematic in terms of security and indeed in some companies just a sheer inability to deploy solutions that arrive with Chinese network software. It's a sad truth, but true, and with arguably reason. Also, although they have access to a repository of containerized applications, none of them have had their files and folder creation made to be truly one click. They're one click to download the image and load it onto a live container, but you still have to go into the settings and tweak them significantly to give them the right amount of access in your system. That's something that HexOS is one of its chief selling factors, the fact that gradually over time, as they get the routine rhythm and the foundation aligned, that they are going to allow you to truly one-click an app and install it, and you have access to the right data while simultaneously not having access to the wrong data or the secure data you don't want it to see. Now, flippity-floppity, there is still no HexOS client app, and indeed, given that TrueNAS presumably has pumped money into HexOS, I say TrueNAS, I mean IX Systems, have clearly pumped money in, and they don't have a client application to start with, it's a weird omission for them not to have client tools. And it is clearly something from Zima, when you go to their GitHub, that they nailed down exceedingly early in development to ensure they had the ZSpace application, the Z tool, the Z client tool, up and running early doors. That was one of their priorities, and fair play to them, it has stood to their benefit significantly with the peer-to-peer dropping and the USB 4 connectivity there. Now, from here, if you are a novice user, I still can't recommend HexOS at this time. I like what HexOS are doing, and if they can commit and deliver on the promises they're making, I do think it's going to be an interesting platform, and I do think it stands to rock the boat for other OSs like Unraid and more in the market. But as it stands right now, it just feels like a skin. It just feels like a wrapper. And all of the things it's saying it can do, it hasn't delivered upon. If they just rolled out the client app out the gate, I think more users would find it less contentious about the price tag early doors. And for a lifetime license as well, thinking I want a lifetime back from this. And as a beginner, although I'm not going to say ZimaOS is anything like a Synology DSM in terms of usability, I will say it is very easy for users to understand, and it has a lot more of those quality of life deliveries, which they're able to do, of course, because they're designing the software from the ground up. Whereas HexOS has to build on top of something that exists and takes exceedingly complicated structure and make it chewable, crayon, user-friendly. So for the beginners, I really can only recommend ZimaOS at this time. But as your skill set levels up and your needs, requirements, scalability and more add up, it has to be said that HexOS becomes more attractive thanks to TrueNAS, thanks to, again, combining stability, configuration and security of TrueNAS alongside usability and custom creation that's being built into the front end of HexOS gradually over time. I just hope a year from now we can make a video about this where HexOS can more suitably justify its early price tag there. Yes, it's a lifetime price tag, so it's not really fair to say they have to justify it on day dot, but even then, early doors, there's just not enough on the table for some users to consider this worth the jump. But there you go. What do you guys think? Have you used both of these platforms? Which one are you finding meets your needs? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've got a suggestion for the next raid room, you know where the comments are. Let me know. Apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.